Imagine being in a medieval hilltop village that was recently a ghost town, but now is a thriving village full of art galleries, cafes, and artisan shops. Well, that is only one of the incredible places we are taking you to today on our day trip through the Istrian Peninsula. We will weave our way from the popular seaside town of Porek with its famous cathedral full of intricate mosaics to Groznan, the special village full of colour and art and classical music, and finally to the most famous hilltop village in Croatia with its truffles and a wine with a very, let's say, unusual name. Once again, you can see all the pictures, one-page written guide with links to the tours and places we mentioned in the podcast by clicking on the link in the description on the podcast player you're listening on now. So please enjoy our day trip to the Istrian Peninsula. It's episode 108. Well, welcome back, as I said, to the Beach Travel Wine podcast, and here with my handsome co-host. Hey, Dal.
Hey, Dal. How you doing?
I'm well, thank you. But last week, our last podcast, episode 107, was all about Ravine on the Istrian Peninsula. We had so much great feedback about that and lots of questions about day trips, and that's what this week's podcast is about, as I said in the intro. It was an amazing few places we visited, in the mountain areas and the coastal areas on the Istrian Peninsula, yes?
Yeah, it was fabulous.
Really, really good.
And our driver or the tour guide was fabulous too.
Yeah, no, we love doing tours because you just learn so much, even if it's a walking tour or a day trip tour, don't we? You just get the local...
the local perspective on it.
And you meet other travellers as well, and they give you, lots of tips on where they've been, and you can help them as well. So we really love it. So I was keen to do this one because I wanted to go to Motovun, the hillside village, and so I found a day trip that included that and some wine tasting. Luckily, we went to some other places as well. So let's start from the beginning, shall we?
Yeah.
I think that's a good place to start.
So
we're just going to say, we went to some mountain towns and some coastal ones on the Istrian Peninsula because where we stayed, Ravine's beautiful, but there's some other places that are pretty special as well. Yes?
Yes.
So we started at?
Porek.
Yes.
So Porek is a coastal town. It's a popular summer resort. In the historic old town, the 6th century Euphrasia Basilica complex is famous for its studded Byzantine mosaics.
And that's the main reason we went there, was to show us this famous church with its mosaics. It was really beautiful. And as we walked in, the bells started to play, didn't they? Not play is probably the wrong thing, but ring, and they were constant. And there was a service going on, as it was a Sunday. So we were lucky enough to still be able to go inside and see those mosaics, weren't we?
Yeah, the funny thing about this, sorry, I've got to get this right. Euphrasian Basilica. It was built during the time of Bishop Euphrasian in the 6th century. It includes atrium baptistry, bishop's palace, mosaics, and the remains of sacred buildings dating from the 3rd to the 4th century.
And there's also a museum there, so it's worth going to Porek. This is really famous and really beautiful.
Yeah, now the mosaics which decorate the inside and facade of the church are considered a valuable bequest of the Byzantine art. The great Porcian bishop, basically, he had a pretty high opinion of himself. He had his own initials inscribed in many of the prominent places and the apse. He found his way into the space meant exclusively for saints and martyrs and the very Virgin and Christ, showing in a very unambivalent way he saw himself.
So what you're saying there is the bishop basically thought, I'm so good, I want to put my initials everywhere and I want to be included in these sacred places, even though I'm just the bishop.
Yeah. And in fact, it got to the stage where he
acted after himself.
Yeah, and also that at one stage too, like the Roman Catholic Pope wasn't probably as powerful as he is now, but he was such a narcissistic, or some may say...
The Pope or this guy?
This guy.
Yeah.
Narcissistic or maybe authoritarian person that, in fact, the Pope actually excommunicated him. Right. But he didn't give a continental. He just kept on doing what he was doing, and that was it.
Well,
So
we got the nice mosaics to enjoy though, which I really did, because we've been in a lot of churches around the place, but this was pretty, not huge, but just really spectacular. And
but
then,
it did look old, didn't it?
Oh,
Like it really looked old.
and then we had a bit of a wander around the street. The old streets had the pastel houses as well, and the cobblestone streets. It was a little bit more upmarket too. Like it had a really bit of a upmarket feel to it, the shops and things around that old town area. And then we walked through, and behind the old town area, there's a beautiful bay which was full of boats and a nice path that walks around the bay as well. And then on the other side of the old town was the port area, where there was lots of restaurants and things as well. So we didn't have a lot of time in Warwick, but it was really beautiful, wasn't it?
Yeah, and look, probably the standout for me was basically the amount of original Roman architecture, and there's even one house there, which is a freestanding house that's still as it was in Roman time. And the main square was huge. Remember it?
Yeah, there was another church there, and that actually was, they had a service going on in that as well.
So that was the Church of Our Lady of Angels.
Okay, there's another massive right there. So you got the old and the new. It blends really well in Porrick, I reckon.
Yeah, and of course that square was just surrounded by cafes and restaurants and that sort of thing. So typical of most of the cities that we've seen.
Also, on our drive from Ravin to Porrick, we drove through a lot of vineyards on the way. Just vine after vine after vine, didn't we?
Yep.
Like they're just, and it's a huge wine area.
I think it's got olive trees as well.
It's a Malvasian wine area, isn't it? That's
correct.
Yeah, so it's a really famous for that white wine in the Istrian Peninsula.
Yep.
Yeah. So, all right, back on the bus. So, back to Porrick. You could stay there as well for a few days. Like it's certainly got lots to do. Do you reckon?
Yeah. Look, I look at it. It's beautiful, but I'd probably still would prefer Ravin.
Okay, but you could stay in Porrick. I think it has better transport options.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So back on our bus, and we would then. Oh, this is probably maybe my favourite. No, this was my favourite. This was amazing. Groznan was the town we were heading to. Now, it's up, so we're at sea level and we're heading up 285 metres or something, I think.
288, yep.
88.
But who's
3 metres between friends?
Yep.
So it's a lot of winding roads around mountains, and once again you've got the vineyards, but you've also got some, what are they called, the cypress pines, and the guide said to us, the cypress pines in Croatia are normally for around the cemetery, but it does make it look a bit like the Tuscan landscape with the rolling hills and the cypress pines. So the views just driving along, and I had the front seat, so I was really lucky, and it was just spectacular driving around those mountains, and it's green and it's lush, and you've got the vines as well. We stopped right where you could see Groznan from, and he stopped so we could all take some photos, and the view across there was just so pretty.
Like it was glorious.
So,
the landscape.
So go to the podcast player you're listening on and click on the link to episode 108, because I've got photos of all these places that we went and the views. We're going to talk about that a whole lot, because we did see some pretty nice views. So that was a quick stop, and then we went back on the bus again, and we made it to Groznan. Now, Groznan has quite a long history, but it's got a really fascinating modern history and how it's become the town it is, which I just blew me away, really. You arrive in there's a car park area, and you walk down into the main sort of square, which once again you're up high, and the views down the valley are amazing. And that's really where you enter into this hillside medieval village, really, isn't it?
To call it even a village is maybe exaggerating. Look, the current population is 142. And
this is a city that basically is quiet, doesn't have much going on in the winter season, but come summer, it becomes alive.
Yep,
yes.
That's right.
Yeah.
Look, and the urban area is 3.4 square miles or 8.7 square kilometres. Look, it's had a pretty rough history, really. It's actually been deserted on, I think, about 3 occasions. One was the 1930 plague. So the whole thing was just a ghost town. and then also
occupied by
the Venetians, and actually to get people back to the Grosnian after the plague, the Venetian government
gave away free land and stuff.
Yeah, basically give away free land, and people didn't have to pay taxes. Yeah, they had that land for 20 years, and as long as they cultivate it within the first 5 years, they didn't have to pay taxes or anything like that. And that was to repopulate the place. But then there was another problem, and I can't remember exactly what it was.
World War I and II.
And also when Yugoslavia came into power over that area.
Half was Yugoslavian and half was something else, like this one little mountaintop village.
Because it was basically full of Italians, because of obviously the Venetian thing with the settlers, they were probably seen as a minority in relation to the Yugoslav government. So they all moved out again.
Yeah.
So, but then in the 1960s, this is
World War II. It basically the town was completely deserted. It was a ghost town.
Correct.
Right? So that was 1945 that finished the World War II, and then
in the late 1940s. Yeah.
So it basically was a ghost town from 1945 up until 1960.
Yep.
And a guy who was a sculptor and an artist, was his name Alexander something?
Alexander, and I'm just looking for it. It's Alexander, and I'm probably going to get this wrong. Rukavina.
That's it.
Rukavina.
Now, he was a sculptor, and he lived from 1934 to 1985. Now, this guy, there's a, what do they call that? Like the top half of him, a statue of him.
Bust
at the entrance to
the town.
Grosnian, correct. And he was the one that brought the town back to life in its current state. Now, he was a sculptor, and he had this idea, what if we get other artists to come and own one of these little houses, little buildings, and they have to maintain them, and we'll make it an artist village. And that's what he did. And so what happens is sort of from May all through the high season, these artists open up their galleries, and they've got this amazing, gorgeous little streets, and the flowers and the trees and the plants and even the gates and the doorways. It's so artistic. There's bright colours, and there's like mosaics above some doors, and there's little artwork statues in the gardens and things. It is absolutely beautiful just walking around there. I just couldn't get enough photos of that. And if that wasn't enough,
in 1969, the cultural centre of the International Music Youth Foundation was established in the same town. So firstly, you had all the artists, and they were basically given the
keys to the city.
Keys
Look after
to
it, make it pretty.
Yeah, make it pretty, and they did it. And then they came up with the idea to include musicians. And actually, when we were walking around, and this really floored me, all you can hear is piano music, and they're basically practicing. And because part of it is obviously there's awards.
Yeah,
right.
But they have like a performing venue there as well.
Oh, sure.
So you can come and try out to actually be part of the music college, or you can be a performer that's going to be performing there. So as Lyle was saying, you're walking around looking at these little staircases going up around the buildings and the pretty flowers and then the artwork sitting there, and you can hear the classical piano playing, and like it's sort of haunting because
acoustics
of it sort of going around these little alleyways. You can hear it, in all different places. And it's not just piano. That was what we heard the day we were there. It's obviously all the, instruments from
the string instruments and the brass and all that sort of thing. So it's a really big deal. And I actually, from what I've read, a lot of, I suppose, young pianists and
aspiring
musicians. Yeah, they've actually
to go.
Yeah. Yeah, and they've then developed from this little town. So
it's a really good thing to have on your resume to say you've been to the Music Foundation College there. For that's for sure.
So, and the reason why Alex Rukavina was so popular, well, one, he was an excellent sculptor, but he had a real charisma about him, and everybody loved him. He played it pretty hard.
There's the sculpture of him, the sculpture of him, or that has him holding a
hammer.
so to show he's a sculptor. It has him holding a book as well, because he's really he was into reading and the arts. But he also has a pack of cigarettes.
Well, he's got a cigarette, yeah. So because
was never seen without a cigarette in his
and
hand.
He apparently liked to drink, and really he it's 34 to 85, so 51.
Yeah, he wasn't that old, was he?
He was when he passed away, but they said he enjoyed life.
He did, and so he's the one that made this town come alive. We also, it's also there are restaurants and cafes.
There's only a couple, really.
Yeah, but they're perched on the edge of
the escarpment.
The escarpment. So our guide recommended a couple, and we had a bit of a look, and we sat with another couple from the States that we chatted to, and had a nice cold beer overlooking the views. It was, and a pizza. It was really cool. I really enjoyed that, and you could have sat there all afternoon just looking at those views. It was really beautiful, wasn't it?
Yeah, the views down the valley and everything were just superb. Yeah, that was a real surprise. I didn't know we were going there, really. I had no idea about that town actually existed.
No.
But you'd have to say, I think I said to you, it reminded me of LaGuardia, which is a hilltop town in Spain, which we just loved, which again overlooked the wineries, and it was just, I loved it.
Yeah, well, but this one did have all those little galleries around.
Sure.
That's what I really enjoyed that. And they weren't all open the day we were there. We were there sort of in May, and so they weren't. Some of them were open, but you just imagine. Actually, I liked it because it was a bit quieter, but you can just imagine the vibrancy of that place, because it is one of the number one day trips in Istria, and even the local sort of motorbike riders. And our guide kept saying, let's hope the push aren't out today, because going up those narrow, windy roads, and it can hold the traffic up. Lots of bike riders, they love attacking those hilltop, windy roads, don't they? Yeah. So really loved it. Groznan.
Yeah, if you go to Ravin and you're looking for a day trip. Yeah.
And as I said, episode 108, the podcast play you're listening on now, go and have a look at those, because they're, really, really beautiful and just different to everywhere we'd been before. Do you agree?
Yeah, it was great.
And having the guide, once again, lots of information. And we had some free time to wander around and have our lunch as well. That was another nice thing about this tour. And if you're interested in finding out what tour it is, I'll have a link to that in our website as well. So episode 108, beachtravelwine.com. And I did take some videos. So Beach Travel Wine on Instagram. Go up the top to the story highlights and click on Ravin, Croatia, and it's in that group of stories, and you'll see the panoramic views and the beautiful art galleries and things that I took videos of there. So I loved that, and it was a surprise.
Yep.
Never knew anything about it. So really, really lovely. Now, back on the bus, I definitely wanted to go to Motovun. When you do any research on day trips, wine tastings, hillside villages in the Istrian Peninsula, Motovun is the one that turns up all the time. And it, from a distance, it's like a white hillside village, and it is spectacular. It's not big at all.
No. It has a total population of the area of 983, but urban Motovun, I think it's spelled Motovun, is only 397 people.
So we arrived here, and the car park's down a little bit, because these medieval villages are basically pedestrian only.
Yeah, horse and carts.
Yeah. So
horse and cart width.
Yeah, you can't get normal size vehicles in them. And the first thing you do is walk up past wine tasting and olive oil tasting and truffle tasting, up through the main city gates that you walk through. And once again, there's cafes and restaurants, and there's an original sort of patio area that we went and had a little chat under. Then the guide gave us some information about Motovun. And then from there, you'd go up under another sort of arch tunnelway, and the cobblestone streets there, our guide said this is what they call the steps, and that they weren't really steps. It was like a ramp that goes up, and it was all out of rocks and cobblestones. But across the width of it, every sort of 20 centimeters or so, there was like a thin rock that stood up a bit higher than the ramp. And he said, "Oh, these are what they call steps. Do you know why this was there?" And we did, because we'd seen it before somewhere else, and that was for the horses to get up the ramp, so they didn't slide back down. So we went up under the tunnel there, and then you come out to the main square, which has a massive church there as well. St. Stephen's, is it?
Correct,
Yeah.
St. Stephen's.
Yeah. So tell us a bit about that, Don.
Well, St. Stephen's, we actually went inside, but just the original history of the Motovun. In ancient times, both Celts and Illyrians built the fortress as its present-day location. The name of the village is also Celtic origin, derived from Montana, meaning a town in the hills.
That's original.
Yeah. Look, on the inner walls are several coats of arms and of different Motovun ruling families, and 2 gravestones of Roman inhabitants dating back from the 1st century. The 10th and 11th century, it belonged to the Bishop of Perec. From 1278, it was taken over by Venice and surrounded by solid walls, which are still intact today.
Well, we actually walked. It's only about 400 meters long, but you perched up on the side of a hill, and I think that's probably the best views we had all day, wasn't it? Back down over from there, maybe.
Oh, look, it was glorious. The late Renaissance Church of St. Stephen, which is what you asked me, was built at the beginning of the 17th century.
Okay.
So again, like I still like it. Why do they continue to? Yeah, obviously it was because of fortification and all that sort of thing, but they did it hard.
Did it tough. They've laid all these stones all the way up, and they've built these buildings, and they've fortified it and everything. Also, though, a couple of interesting things about Motovun is Motovun is there's a hotel there.
Correct.
Yeah, so
right up the top of the hill.
Up the top of the hill, there's a modern hotel just sitting there, which seems a bit out of place, but what a great place to stay. Like, I don't know what you're going to do there except taste truffles and wine, but it's really beautiful. And they have like a lovely courtyard area at the front of that as well. So, and we actually saw some cyclists arrive as well. So how the heck they get up there?
Oh man!
Really,
really. Terrible. I just cannot understand why you would want to do that. But
it was, look, I don't know what I thought. I thought maybe it would be a bit bigger, but it was certainly spectacular. And we were supposed to do some truffle tasting, and of course, being a Sunday, they weren't open.
Oh, so what they've done now is the Croatian government have brought in a law that you can only open certain amount of Sundays, and I think it's to do. There might be a bit of an agreement with the churches, and also maybe even the unions, so that the Croatian retailers don't have to work every Sunday. So we missed out on the truffle tasting.
One of the girls on the tour was really disappointed because she said, "Well, that's the main reason I really wanted to do this tour, was to do truffle tasting." So our guide went off and went to some of the other places that were open and actually organised for us to do tastings, but not just of truffles. We had cheeses, we had the truffle paste, the white truffle, and which you'll tell us about in a minute, and the black truffles. And there was some fruit liqueurs that we tried as well as wine tasting. It was really delicious. It was Malvasia. We actually bought a couple of bottles, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. Yeah. And the wine label was spelt Fakin wines, and the sign out the front said
"Faking good wine."
Faking good wine. Now we've cleaned that up because
that's not how they pronounce it.
That's not how they pronounce it. They pronounce it like it's Fukin. Yeah. So
we were drinking.
Well, the lady that was doing
good wine.
Yeah. That's a good one. Good one. You got away with it. Yeah, but the lady that was, and she was absolutely lovely, and she was so helpful with the wine.
Well, the sign out the front, like as you said, and they've got it above the door. They're playing on that.
Oh, of course they are, and it's a family name.
Yeah, it's
So
their surname, exactly.
yeah. So I don't know what it'd be like in Croatia. They may not have the same connotations that you would say in
Aussie bogans.
Australia. But she was lovely.
We had truffle chips, and
the truffle chips were good.
It was so good.
Potato chips. They were potato chips. Yeah, it was really good.
Truffle. But from Motovun, there's a forest area, isn't there?
Yes, they call it the Forest of Motovun.
Oh, that's unusual. And you can see like a green patch basically from Motovun where you're standing. You look down another side of the mountain, and basically there's a little river and the highway, and then behind that is like a big, long, rectangular green forest.
Yeah, so I'll read this. So on the other side of the river Mirna, which is Mirna, is the famous Motovun Forest. Area of about 10 square kilometres or 4 square miles, of which 280 hectares or 690 acres is specifically protected. This area differs completely not only from the nearby forests because of the wildlife and moist soil and the prized black and white truffles. This apparently, like this particular area in Europe or in Istria, you get the best truffles.
You can't grow white truffles everywhere. Most
no, that's correct.
Are black, so that's what makes it unusual as well.
So to preserve the natural condition of the development of the Motovun forest, the protected area is occasionally flooded, even though the river Mirna is controlled and its entire valley protected from flooding. On the slopes of the hill, grapes of famous Istrian wine are grown. The Ferran and the Malvasian grapes.
You can see them everywhere.
Yeah, again, it was pretty outstanding. Yeah, it was like, and we did the walk around the wall, as you said. I think it was about €10. But the views are just outstanding. It's just valley, and they just go forever.
Yeah, it was really amazing. Apparently, I was reading that they're having trouble trying to keep development out. There's some overseas interests that are trying to buy up land to build resorts and 2 golf courses, which I guess you can understand why they'd want to, but you can understand why the locals don't want them as well. They're always going to have that sort of problem, aren't they? Now, an interesting thing though about Motovun was one of
their favourite sons.
Well,
yes.
Son,
yeah.
Who was?
Well, it was Mario Andretti. He was born in Motovun in 1940. He left his hometown at age 8. Now, some people have probably got no idea who Mario Andretti is. He is one of 2 racing car drivers that actually won a Formula One championships. They won IndyCar and the World Sports Car Championship and the NASCAR Sprint. There's only 2 in the world, 2 drivers, and Mario Andretti is one of them. And if anybody that's into car racing and that sort of thing, but they know who he is. Yeah.
Interesting is they say, and they being the experts, that he got his love of speed by racing billy carts down the steep. I mean, I can't even imagine. Like, I've got grandkids who say that, like 8. Like, I'm just like, I can't imagine seeing that. Like,
him and his brother used to race carts going down the hill.
I can't imagine it. You can imagine like Sam and Charlie. Like, they do it, right? Like, but you'd be terrified.
You especially would be terrified
by watching them. So that's what they say. That's how he got into racing, was because he lived in Motovun on the side of on the top of an amazing hill. Yeah.
Well, again, it's one of those things. Don't let the truth get in the way of a good story.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, of course.
So yeah, Motovun was this day trip was just amazing. So we saw the Groznan, the artist thing. I love that. And even Porek with its beautiful houses and things. Motovun was just like the cherry on top. I thought it was everything I was hoping it would be. And I'm glad we got to spend some nice time there.
Well, to be honest, I was really surprised because when we decided to do Croatia, the big thing is about the islands, and it's about the seaside and the beaches and and look, don't get me wrong.
There'll be plenty of podcasts about that too.
There will be plenty of podcasts about that, but Ravine is just beautiful, right? But what I didn't understand is how beautiful the countryside was. Not far. Like, I don't know. What did it take us? 30, 40 minutes to get
well, we're there
to that?
It was a whole day out, but nothing was too far to get to. If you got your own car, you could drive.
Sure. Absolutely.
You would miss out on the information.
But I would have been, even though I wouldn't have known, but now that I do know, I would have been really disappointed if we hadn't have done that day tour.
Yeah, and as I said, if you want to see the pictures or the links to the tour that we did, just go to beachtravelwine.com, episode 108, and the link to that is in the podcast player you are listening on now. Okay, let's move on. Another popular place to see on the Istrian Peninsula is a seaside town called Pulla. Yeah. Now, Pulla is famous. It's got a big port area, and obviously it's a good transport area. But it's got some Roman ruins that I think most people would want to go and see. So
Look, it's one of the larger towns in Istria. It's got 56,540 people.
That's a lot of people. So you can get there like as a day trip as well from Ravine, or it is a nice place to stay for a couple of nights. So,
it has been occupied, destroyed, and rebuilt numerous times. The Romans, the Ostrogoths, the Venetians, as well as the Allied forces in World War II, have each administered the city. As Leanne said, its claim to fame is the Roman ruins, and the main one is the Pulla Arena, which is basically a Roman Colosseum. It's the whole of the outside is intact.
Yes.
Okay, so that's the only one in the world that's like that. There's nothing inside it really.
You can go down and see where the prisoners and animals, they've got that sort of area.
Yeah, down where the gladiators.
They don't have any of the steps and the viewing platforms and things. But it is amazing. It's huge, isn't it?
Then you've also got the Temple of Augustus, and that was to honour Augustus, which was the first emperor of Rome, and Julius Caesar was his great uncle. Right. And so there's a Temple of Augustus, and that was probably built during the emperor's lifetime at some point between 27 BC and his death in 14 AD. The temple was part of a triad of three temples. The Temple of Augustus stood on the left side of the central temple, and a similar temple of the goddess of Diana stood on the other side of the main temple.
A lot of Roman ruins preserved very well here in Croatia, which is a shame, but this is some of the better ones is in Pulla. So it's nice for a few days. It's got obviously the restaurants and things it's known for as well, being sort of that bigger area, a bigger population. There's a lot more choice in the restaurants as well.
There's plenty of day trips out of Ravine that are really, really worth going to have a look at.
Yeah, well, day trips on the Istrian Peninsula, that's right. It's not a big area, but it's the biggest peninsula in the Adriatic Sea. But once again, doing the tour, finding out the information, like you would, unless you knew what you're looking for, you would never have got to Groznan. You probably went to Porek and Motovun and would never even have known about that beautiful town that was a ghost town that's now just a gorgeous artisan village, yeah? Well, the question has come though. So in our time exploring the Istrian Peninsula, where was your favourite place to have a glass of wine?
I'd have to say effing wines, effing good wines. Yeah. Clean it up. But yeah, look, because I thought she was just lovely. Yeah. And she was so informative, and the wine was excellent. I mean, the best Malvasian, and we've sort of fallen a bit in love with a Malvasian grape, and I think it was probably I'd say it was the best Malvasian wine we've had.
All right. So can I go now?
Sure, though.
I'm going to say at the restaurant in Groznan. Yeah,
So you didn't like the view at all?
that little town, little village, just blew me away. It really did. I was around every corner. I just loved it. It was so quaint and pretty, and it was just so nice to sit there and have a. It wasn't a wine; it was a cold beer. But I loved that. I really, really did.
Yeah, to say I thought about how you describe Grosjean, and to say that it's cute undersells it, and even maybe to say it's quaint undersells it. It's just unique.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
So go and check out the pictures of all the places we've talked about. Hope you've enjoyed this podcast all about a day trip in the Istrian Peninsula. Beachtravelwine.com, episode 108. The link is in the podcast player you are listening on now. So thank you for joining us again, and we will see you again in our next episode. And so it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from her.
From her.